The day the humans broke us, the stars burned cold and distant as Commander Jothik stood on the bridge of his warship. His scales gleamed under the harsh lights, a deep purple that marked him as elite among the Rexian Empire. Today would be easy. Today would be routine. Today his fleet would harvest another primitive world. "Commander, we have arrived at the target system," his navigator announced. The being's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of respect. Jothik nodded. On the main screen, a blue and green planet appeared. It looked peaceful, soft. The readings showed it had low gravity, thin atmosphere by Vrexian standards, and inhabitants with no natural armor or weapons. The species called themselves humans, and they would make excellent laborers. "Begin the operation," Jothik commanded. 50 warships descended toward Earth like falling stars. The humans tried to fight back. Their primitive missiles and projectile weapons bounced harmlessly off Rexian shields. Their aircraft fell from the sky in flames. Their cities burned with barely any effort at all. Within 6 hours, Earth's military capability ceased to exist. Jothik watched the harvesting begin with satisfaction. Transport ships landed in the smoking ruins, and collection teams rounded up humans by the thousands. The creatures were small, fragile-looking things. They had only 2 eyes, weak skin that bruised easily, and they made pitiful sounds when separated from their family groups. "How many have we collected?" Jothik asked. 10 million, Commander. We have filled our transport capacity." "Excellent. Process them and distribute them across labor worlds 7, 13, and 19. Standard protocols apply." The transport ships left Earth's atmosphere, carrying their cargo of confused, terrified humans. Behind them, the planet burned. Cities lay in ruins. Billions of humans remained, but they no longer had the ability to reach the stars. They were trapped on their dying world, and their people were gone. On the observation deck of the Consortium Council Station, Counselor Ithvera watched the operation through long-range sensors. Her species, the Elvar, had been part of the Galactic Consortium for 20,000 years. She had seen hundreds of harvesting operations. This one seemed no different. "Another successful uplift," her aide commented. "The humans will be put to productive use." Ithvera said nothing. Something about the data troubled her, but she could not identify what. The humans had fought hard, harder than expected for such a weak species, and the way they organized, even in defeat, showed unusual intelligence. But the Vrexians had won. They always won. The galaxy had known peace under Vrexian military dominance for 10,000 years. One more primitive species joining the labor force would barely be noticed. The transport ships arrived at Vrex Prime, the Vrexian homeworld, 3 weeks later. The humans were unloaded into massive processing facilities. Here they would be cataloged, evaluated, and assigned to work details. Dr. Sarah Chen stumbled out of the transport ship with 500 other humans. The journey had been nightmare. Packed into cramped spaces, given minimal food and water, many had died during the trip. The survivors were hollow-eyed and exhausted. Rexian guards herded them into long lines. The guards were huge, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick scales and powerful limbs. They carried weapons that crackled with energy. When one human moved too slowly, a guard struck them with a shock rod. The human collapsed, convulsing. "Move faster, primitives," the guard roared. Sarah helped the fallen human to their feet. She was a xenobiologist trained to study alien life. Now she was studying her captors, memorizing every detail. The Vrexians were reptilian, cold-blooded by the look of them. They moved with confidence, arrogance even. They saw humans as animals, nothing more. The processing took hours. Humans were scanned, tagged with tracking implants, and assigned identification numbers. Sarah became Subject 7 Alpha 2847. Her name no longer mattered. They were separated into groups. Sarah found herself with 200 other humans loaded onto another transport. This one took them to a mining facility on a moon orbiting Vrex Prime. The work would be brutal, she was told. Many would die. The Vrexians did not care. The mining facility was a massive complex carved into the moon's surface. Humans worked in teams, extracting valuable minerals from deep underground. The air was thin, the gravity was wrong, and the work was backbreaking. Vrexian overseers watched from safe distances, ready to punish any who slowed down. Sarah worked alongside a man named David Park. He had been a construction worker on Earth, strong and capable. Even he struggled with the work. "We won't survive this," he whispered during a brief rest period. "Half our group is already dead." "We'll survive," Sarah said firmly. "We have to. but survival seemed unlikely. The Rexians gave them minimal food, barely enough water, and only 6 hours of sleep. Injuries were common. Medical care was non-existent. When humans died, their bodies were simply removed and new workers brought in. Yet something strange began to happen. Sarah noticed it first in the 3rd week. Humans who should have died from their injuries kept working. A man with a badly broken arm continued hauling ore, his face twisted in pain but determined. A woman with severe burns refused to stop, even though the Rexians expected her to die. The humans were adapting. Sarah began keeping notes in her mind, unable to write anything down. She observed that humans healed faster than the Rexians predicted. They found ways to survive on less food than other species would need. Most importantly, they worked together. In the sleeping quarters, humans shared their rations with the weak. They taught each other tricks to make the work easier. They formed bonds, creating family groups to replace the ones stolen from them. The Rexians noticed none of this. To them, humans were just another species of slave. But David Park noticed. "We're not breaking," he said one night. "They expect us to give up, but we're not." "No," Sarah agreed. "We're not." In the following months, Sarah began to observe more. She memorized guard patrol patterns. She learned basic Rexian language by listening carefully. She studied the facility's layout, the security systems, the weak points in their captors' routines. Other humans did the same. A former soldier named Marcus taught combat techniques in whispered conversations. A computer programmer named Lisa figured out how the Vrexian electronic locks worked. An engineer named Roberto started understanding their machinery. The humans were learning, planning, preparing. 6 months after the harvest, a strange thing happened in processing facility Theta 7. A group of humans attempted a breakout. They had fashioned crude weapons from mining tools and attacked the guards during a shift change. The breakout failed. All 30 humans involved were killed, but the Vrexians were shaken. The attack had been coordinated, tactical, and nearly successful. One guard had died before reinforcements arrived. The humans had known exactly when and where to strike. Commander Jothic reviewed the incident report with growing anger. "How did primitives organize such an attack?" he demanded. "Unknown, Commander," his security chief replied. "We believed them incapable of such coordination. Increase security. Separate the humans. Prevent communication between groups, yes, Commander." But it was already too late. The idea had spread. In mining facilities, processing centers, and labor camps across 3 worlds, humans were organizing. They were learning. They were remembering. In her sleeping quarters on the moon above Rex Prime, Sarah Chen lay awake. David Park's daughter had died that day, worked to death at age 12. Sarah had held the girl as she breathed her last, too weak even to cry. Around her, other humans slept fitfully, but Sarah saw something in their faces that the Vrexians had missed. It was not despair. It was not surrender. It was rage. The Vrexians had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen weakness. They had seen soft skin and small bodies and assumed the species would break easily. They had taken humans from their world, murdered their families, and worked them like animals. But humans did not break. Sarah thought about Earth. Somewhere down there, billions of her people still lived. Did they know what had happened? Did they understand that 10 million humans were enslaved across the stars? She thought about the Vrexians. They were strong, advanced, and cruel. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through military might, but they had never met humanity before. In the darkness, Sarah Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized she was not prey. The Vrexians had harvested humanity. Soon they would learn the cost of that decision. Soon they would learn what it meant to make an enemy of Earth. The day humans broke them was coming, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The day the humans broke us, the Vrexian overseer struck the human across the face with his shock rod. The human fell to the ground, twitching from the electrical charge. Around them, other humans continued working, their faces carefully blank. They had learned not to react. "Reactions brought more punishment. Work faster," the overseer bellowed. "You are behind quota." The human on the ground slowly pushed himself up. Blood dripped from his mouth. But he picked up his mining tool and returned to work. The overseer watched, confused. That level of shock should have left the creature unconscious for hours. This human was working again within minutes. This was not the first time such things happened. Across 3 Vrexian labor worlds, the overseers were reporting strange problems. The humans were not behaving as expected. Other slave species broke within weeks, accepting their fate and working efficiently. Humans did not break. They endured. 6 months had passed since the harvest. Production numbers were terrible. Equipment failures had increased by 300%. Accidents happened constantly. Tools broke. Machines stopped working. Shipments were lost or contaminated. The Vrexians blamed the humans, but they could never prove it. The accidents seemed random. The failures appeared natural. Yet they kept happening with suspicious frequency. In the mining facility on the moon of Vrex Prime, Sarah Chen had become something more than a prisoner. She had become a leader. In whispered conversations during rest periods, in coded gestures during work shifts, she coordinated resistance across the entire facility. "We cannot fight them directly," she told David Park one night. "They are too strong, too many. But we can make them pay in other ways." "And how?" David asked. His daughter's death had changed him. The grief had turned to cold fury. "We make their victory expensive. Every piece of equipment we sabotage costs them money. Every shipment we ruin hurts their economy. Every day we survive costs them resources. We bleed them slowly." The message spread through the human population. Resistance became subtle, invisible. A mining machine would develop a fault that took days to repair. Ore shipments would be accidentally contaminated with worthless rock. Safety systems would mysteriously fail, causing delays. The Vrexians grew frustrated, but they could not stop it. They increased punishments, but the humans absorbed the pain and continued their silent war. In his command center on Vrex Prime, Commander Jothic studied the reports with growing concern. The human labor operation was supposed to be profitable. Instead, it was costing the Empire resources. The other Vrexian officers were beginning to question his competence. "Perhaps we should eliminate the humans and harvest a different species," his second-in-command suggested. "No," Jothic said firmly. "That would be admission of failure. We will break them, increase interrogation efforts, find their leaders and make examples of them." The interrogations began the next day. Vrexian security forces selected humans at random, taking them to questioning chambers deep in the facility. They used drugs, pain, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. The Vrexians were experts at breaking prisoners. Every species eventually talked, but humans did not talk. Sarah Chen was taken for interrogation in the second week. They strapped her to a metal table and flooded her nervous system with pain signals. She screamed until her voice gave out, but she told them nothing. When they asked for names of other leaders, she laughed in their faces. "You think you can break us?" she rasped. "You have no idea what you have done." They tortured her for 3 days. Then they threw her back into the general population as a warning. Sarah could barely walk. Her body was covered in burns and her mind swam with pain. But she was alive and she had told them nothing. The other humans looked at her with new understanding. If Sarah could survive that and still resist, so could they. The interrogations backfired. Instead of breaking human spirit, they hardened it. Instead of finding leaders, the Vrexians created martyrs. The humans grew more united, more determined. David Park was interrogated 2 weeks later. They showed him recordings of his daughter's death, trying to break him emotionally. They promised him revenge if he would identify the resistance leaders. David looked at his torturer and said 4 words. "You killed my daughter." The Vrexian nodded. "Yes, and we will kill more unless you cooperate." David smiled. It was a terrible smile, empty of everything except hate. "Then kill me, because I will never help you. And one day my people will make you pay for every human who died here." They beat him unconscious and returned him to his cell. Far away from the labor worlds, on the Consortium Council station, Counselor Withvera was conducting research. Something about the human situation bothered her. The Vrexians were making the same reports over and over. The humans were not breaking, production was failing. Resistance was increasing. This was not normal. Withvera accessed Earth's historical database, something the Vrexians had never bothered to do. What she found made her blood run cold. Humans were not a peaceful species. They had spent their entire evolutionary history in conflict. They had survived ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues, and predators that should have wiped them out. They had domesticated wolves into pets. They had hunted megafauna to extinction. They had fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. Most disturbing, humans were persistence hunters. They did not run fast or strike hard. They simply never stopped. They would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their psychology was built around endurance and stubbornness. The Vrexians had not harvested a weak species. They had harvested a species of natural survivors who evolved through constant struggle. Ithvera wrote a report and sent it to the Vrexian High Command. She marked it urgent. She knew they would probably ignore it. The Vrexians were arrogant, certain of their superiority. She was right. Commander Jothik deleted the report without reading it fully. On Earth, something was happening that the Vrexians did not know about. In the ruins of what had been military installations, survivors were gathering. Among them was General Marcus Webb, former commander of Earth's defense forces. He had survived the initial bombardment by sheer luck, buried under rubble that shielded him from follow-up scans. Webb had spent 6 months watching the stars, studying the wreckage of Vrexian ships and gathering other survivors. There were not many. Maybe 10,000 humans total who had military training and survived the harvest, but 10,000 was enough to start. Webb's team had salvaged Vrexian technology from crash sites. They had computers, communication devices, and weapon fragments. Human engineers worked day and night to understand the alien technology. It was far beyond Earth's capability, but humans learned fast when survival depended on it. After 6 months, they achieved a breakthrough. They cracked the Vrexian faster-than-light communication system. Suddenly, Webb could send messages across the stars. He composed a simple broadcast and sent it on frequencies he hoped the captured humans might access. "This is General Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. If any human can hear this, know that you are not alone. Earth survived. We are coming for you. Hold the line." The message reached Sarah Chen 3 days later. A human who worked in the facility's communication hub caught the transmission and passed it along through the resistance network. When Sarah heard it, she wept for the first time since her capture. Earth was still fighting. They were not abandoned. They were not forgotten. The news spread through the human populations on all 3 labor worlds. The change was immediate. Humans worked with new energy, no longer just surviving but preparing. They stepped up their sabotage efforts. They began stealing weapons and hiding them. They organized escape plans. In Processing Facility Theta 7, a group of 200 humans launched a coordinated attack. This time they succeeded. They killed the guards, seized weapons, and fought their way to the facility's shuttle bay. 50 humans made it onto a transport ship and escaped into space. The Vrexians hunted them down and destroyed the ship, but the message was clear. Humans could fight back. Humans could win. Commander Jothik stood in the smoking ruins of Facility Theta 7 and felt fear for the first time in his career. The humans had killed 20 Vrexian guards. They had nearly escaped. And before they died, they had sent a message across Vrexian frequencies. The message was in perfect Vrexian language. "We are coming. Run." Jothik realized, too late, that the Vrexians had made a terrible mistake. They had not harvested a weak species. They had made an enemy of a species that did not know how to surrender. On the moon above Vrex Prime, Sarah Chen gathered her closest allies in secret. David Park was there, his eyes burning with purpose. So were Marcus, Lisa, Roberto, and 24 others. "Earth is coming," Sarah said quietly, "but we cannot wait. We need to hurt them, make them weak, make them scared. When Earth arrives, we need to be ready to fight beside them." "What do you propose?" David asked. Sarah smiled that terrible smile. "We escape, but not just us. We free every human we can and we disappear into their world. Then we show the Vrexians what it means to have an enemy inside their walls." Around her, the other humans nodded. They were done being victims. The Vrexians had harvested humanity. Now humanity would harvest revenge and nothing would stop them. The day the humans broke us, the Consortium Council chamber fell silent as the emergency session began. Representatives from 70 species gathered in the massive hall, their voices creating a chaos of worried sounds. Counselor Ithvera stood at the center podium, her face grave. "The human situation has escalated beyond control," she announced. "We face a crisis unlike any in Consortium history." On the massive screens behind her, footage played. Burning Vrexian facilities, dead guards, escaped humans. The images were shocking. In 10,000 years, no slave species had ever fought back like this. How many facilities have been compromised? asked a counselor from the Threxian species. 18 across 6 worlds, Ithvera replied. Production has ceased entirely. More concerning, 3 Vrexian supply ships have disappeared in human-occupied sectors. We believe they were captured. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. Primitive humans capturing advanced warships? Impossible. But it had happened. 14 months after the harvest, everything changed. Sarah Chen stood in the communication hub of the mining facility, watching the clock count down. Around her, 200 humans waited in tense silence. They had spent months planning this moment. At exactly midnight, 3 things happened simultaneously across 3 different worlds. On Labor World 7, 5,000 humans rose up against their overseers. They had been stealing weapons for months, one piece at a time. They had been studying guard patterns, memorizing security codes, preparing for this exact moment. On Labor World 13, 4,000 humans launched a coordinated assault on the main processing center. They used the Vrexians' own security systems against them, locking guards in their quarters and seizing the armory. On the moon above Vrex Prime, Sarah Chen's group of 2,000 humans struck at the facility's power core. They had learned that if it was damaged, the backup systems would activate, and during the switch there would be 30 seconds of chaos. 30 seconds was all they needed. The power went down. Emergency lights flickered on. In the darkness, humans moved like ghosts. They had planned every step, practiced every movement. They knew exactly where to go, exactly what to do. Sarah led her group to the guard barracks. The Vrexians were scrambling, confused by the sudden blackout. They never expected an attack. Slaves did not attack. Slaves accepted their fate. But humans were not like other slaves. The fighting was brutal and quick. Humans had no armor and inferior weapons, but they had studied Vrexian anatomy for months. They knew where the scales were weakest. They knew which organs were vital. They killed with precision and efficiency. David Park fought like a demon, his daughter's memory driving every strike. He killed 3 guards before they even understood what was happening. Other humans followed his example, attacking with a ferocity the Vrexians had never encountered. Within an hour, the facility was under human control. Sarah stood in the command center, surrounded by her exhausted people. They had won. They had actually won. Get every human to the shuttle bay, she ordered. We are leaving this place. But before they left, Sarah did something the Vrexians would never forget. She accessed the facility's communication system and broadcast a message across all Vrexian military frequencies. She spoke in their language, her words clear and cold. People of the Vrexian Empire, this is Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. You took our families. You murdered our children. You treated us like animals. Now you will learn what it means to make an enemy of humanity. We are no longer your slaves. We are your nightmare. We are coming for you. And we will not stop until every human is free and every one of you has paid for what you have done. Then she destroyed the communication hub and led her people to freedom. 2,000 humans escaped into the wilderness of Rex Prime. The planet was massive, with vast forests and mountain ranges. The Vrexians would search for them, but finding 2,000 determined humans in such terrain would be nearly impossible. Commander Jathic received the news while in his command ship. All 3 uprisings had succeeded. Tens of thousands of humans were now free. More than 100 Vrexian guards were dead. The Empire's labor operation was in ruins. He had failed. Completely and utterly failed. The High Command would hold him responsible. His career was over. His honor was destroyed, and all because of these primitive creatures who refused to break. But worse news was coming. Long-range sensors detected ships emerging from Earth's solar system. At first, Jathic thought it was an error. Humans had no faster-than-light capability. The harvest had destroyed their space program, but the sensors did not lie. 200 ships were approaching, moving at FTL speeds. They were crude vessels, barely holding together, built from salvaged technology and desperation. But they were armed and they were coming. The Vrexian Home Defense Fleet mobilized. 500 warships moved to intercept the human fleet. The odds were overwhelmingly in Vrexian favor. Their ships were faster, stronger, better armed. This would be a massacre. General Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the lead human ship. Around him, his crew worked with grim determination. They all knew the odds. They all knew most of them would die today, but they did not care. General, we are in range, his tactical officer reported. Vrexian fleet is moving to intercept. All ships, this is Webb. Remember why we are here. Remember who we are fighting for. Make every shot count. Make every death matter. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone they took from us. A chorus of acknowledgments came back. Aboard 200 ships, 8,000 humans prepared for battle. The Vrexian fleet opened fire first. Energy beams lanced through space, striking human ships. 3 vessels exploded immediately, their shields inadequate against Vrexian weapons. 4 more ships took critical damage and began to fall behind. But the human fleet did not retreat. They kept coming. The Vrexians fired again. More human ships died. The vacuum of space filled with debris and frozen bodies. By all military logic, the humans should turn back. They were being slaughtered, but humans did not turn back. Webb watched ships die around him. Each one carried friends, soldiers, people he had trained with. Each loss hurt, but he kept his fleet moving forward. "Sir, we have lost 30 ships," his officer reported. "Shields are failing. We cannot win this battle." "We are not trying to win," Webb said calmly. "We are buying time. All ships execute ramming protocols." The Vrexians did not understand at first. Why were the damaged human ships accelerating toward them instead of retreating? Then they realized, too late, what was happening. Human ships, their systems failing and crews dying, turned themselves into missiles. They rammed Vrexian vessels at full speed. Nuclear reactors set to overload on impact. The explosions were massive, destroying both human and Vrexian ships together. The Vrexian fleet panicked. They had never fought an enemy willing to die like this. Every species valued survival. Every species retreated when defeat was certain. Humans did not retreat. The battle turned into chaos. Human ships broke through the Vrexian lines, using suicide tactics to clear a path. Boarding parties launched from damaged human vessels, attaching to Vrexian ships like parasites. Once inside, they detonated nuclear devices they had smuggled aboard in protective containers. Vrexian captains watched in horror as human soldiers blew themselves up inside their ships, taking Vrexian crews with them. It was madness. It was terrifying. It was effective. While the space battle raged, something else was happening on Vrex Prime. Sarah Chen and her 2,000 escaped humans had reached the planet's capital city. They had stolen Vrexian clothing and learned to disguise themselves. In the chaos of the battle above, security was focused on the sky, not on the ground. Sarah's team infiltrated the Orbital Defense Control Center. It was heavily guarded, but the humans had become experts at violence. They killed the guards silently, one by one, and seized the control room. "Can you access the defense grid?" Sarah asked Lisa, their computer expert. Lisa's fingers flew across the alien interface. She had been studying Vrexian systems for months, learning their language and protocols. "I can do better than that. I can turn it against their own fleet," Sarah smiled grimly. "Do it." The orbital defense platforms, massive weapons designed to protect Vrex Prime from invasion, suddenly opened fire on the Vrexian fleet. Beams of coherent energy struck Vrexian ships from behind, destroying dozens before they could react. In space, General Webb saw the defense platforms turn against the Vrexians and understood immediately what had happened. Sarah's group had survived and completed their mission. The impossible was happening. They were actually winning. All ships, push forward. "Get to the planet's surface." The remaining human ships dove toward Vrex Prime, protected now by the very weapons meant to destroy them. Vrexian fighters tried to intercept, but the defense platforms tore them apart. Within hours, human troops were landing on the Vrexian homeworld. They had lost 100 ships and 6,000 people in the battle, but they had broken through. The Vrexian military command center erupted into panic. Their homeworld, unconquered for 10,000 years, was under invasion. By humans, by primitives who should have been easy to enslave. Commander Jothic sat in his command chair and realized the truth. The Vrexians had not broken humanity. Humanity had broken them. On the surface of Vrex Prime, Sarah Chen stood in the captured defense center and broadcast a new message. The Galactic Consortium's emergency fleet arrived at Vrex Prime 6 days after the battle. 300 ships representing 20 different species came to restore order and negotiate peace. Surely they thought the humans had made their point. Surely they could be reasoned with now. Counselor Ythvera led the diplomatic mission. She stood on the bridge of her ship, watching Vrex Prime grow larger on the view screen. The planet was burning. Columns of smoke rose from dozens of cities. Orbital debris from destroyed ships created hazardous clouds around the world. "Hail the human forces," she ordered. "Tell them we come to negotiate." The response came within minutes. General Marcus Webb's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than his file images worn by battle and grief, but his eyes were hard and focused. "Counselor Withvera," Webb said formally, "I know who you are. What do you want?" "General Webb, the consortium acknowledges that the Vrexian Empire acted wrongly toward your species. We are here to negotiate terms of peace. Surely enough blood has been shed." Webb's expression did not change. "You think this is about revenge? You think we came here just to hurt them? What else would it be about?" "Justice," Webb said simply, "and making sure this never happens to anyone else. Your consortium watched the Vrexians enslave my people. You did nothing. You approved. Now you want to negotiate? Fine. Here are my terms: complete and unconditional surrender of the Vrexian Empire. Every officer involved in the harvest stands trial. Full reparations to Earth. And the immediate abolition of slavery across all consortium worlds." Withvera stared at him in shock. "General, those terms are impossible. The consortium cannot simply abolish practices that have existed for thousands of years, and you cannot demand the surrender of an entire empire. Then we have nothing to discuss." Webb moved to cut the transmission. "Wait," Withvera said quickly. "General, please. Be reasonable. You have a fleet of perhaps 100 ships left. The Vrexian military has thousands. You cannot win this war," Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Counselor, you do not understand humanity at all. Watch closely. In 30 seconds I am going to send you files. Study them carefully. Then we will talk again." The transmission ended. 30 seconds later, Withvera's computers received a massive data package. She opened the files with her aide standing beside her. What she saw made her blood freeze. The files showed Earth's asteroid belts, transformed into massive shipyards. Thousands of vessels were under construction, crude but functional. The humans had industrialized their entire solar system for war production. More ships were being launched every day. But worse were the other images. Human combat doctrine, laying out strategies the consortium had never seen, biological weapons designed specifically to target Vrexian physiology, chemical agents, nuclear weapons deployed in ways that violated every rule of civilized warfare, and a schedule, a target list of every Vrexian colony world with estimated timeframes for assault. "They are planning total war," Withvera whispered. "They intend to destroy the entire Vrexian Empire." Her aide looked ill. "Can they actually do this?" "Yes," Withvera said slowly. "I have studied their history. Humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other. They developed warfare into an art form. They know things about killing that we have never imagined, and they will not stop." She opened a communication channel. "I need to speak with the Consortium Council immediately. We have a crisis." The council convened within hours. Representatives from across the galaxy listened as Withvera presented her findings. The room fell into shocked silence when she finished. "You are telling us," the Threxian representative said carefully, "that this primitive species is a legitimate threat to the Vrexian Empire." "I am telling you," Withvera replied, "that if we do not accept General Webb's terms, humanity will burn half the galaxy to get what they want. And they will succeed." "Impossible!" "The Vrexians have the finest military in consortium space. The Vrexians have never fought an enemy like this," Withvera said. "Every other species fights to win territory or resources or honor. Humans fight to exterminate. When threatened with extinction themselves, they respond by threatening extinction in return. It is their nature." The council argued for hours. Some wanted to fight, to show the humans they could not bully the galaxy. Others wanted to negotiate. A few began quietly calculating whether they should simply give the Vrexians to the humans and avoid the conflict entirely. While they argued, General Webb was not waiting. He sent a message to the Consortium Council, bypassing Withvera entirely. The message was simple. "You have 30 days to meet our demands. Every day after that, one Vrexian world burns. You think we are bluffing? You are wrong. We have given you a choice. Make it wisely." The consortium did not believe the threat. They thought humans were posturing, trying to seem stronger than they were. They sent a response rejecting Webb's ultimatum and demanding the humans withdraw from Vrex Prime immediately. Webb read the response and felt nothing. No anger, no surprise. He had expected this. Begin Operation Cleansing Fire, he ordered. 31 days after Webb's ultimatum, a human fleet appeared above Vrexian colony world Delta 9. It was a prosperous world, home to 4 billion Vrexians, with no significant military presence. The human commander broadcast a warning in clear Vrexian. Evacuate this world in 6 hours. After that, everyone remaining will die. This is your only warning. The Vrexian governor laughed at the message. Evacuate 4 billion people in 6 hours? Impossible. And besides, the humans would not really attack civilians. It was against consortium law. It was uncivilized. The Vrexians had still not learned. Humans did not care about consortium law. 6 hours passed. The evacuation had barely begun. Perhaps 10 million Vrexians had made it to ships. The rest remained on the planet, confident the humans were bluffing. Then the human ships opened fire. They did not use energy weapons or missiles. They used kinetic impactors. Massive chunks of metal accelerated to relativistic speeds. The impacts hit the planet like falling gods. The crust cracked. Earthquakes shattered cities. Volcanoes erupted across the globe. The atmosphere filled with dust and ash. Within hours, Delta 9 was dying. Within days, it would be dead. 4 billion Vrexians died. The consortium received the footage and went into shock. The humans had not been bluffing. They had committed genocide without hesitation or remorse. General Webb broadcast another message immediately after the attack. That was day 31. Tomorrow is day 32. The next world is Alpha 4, home to 6 billion Vrexians. You have until tomorrow to evacuate them, or we can discuss my original terms. Panic swept through consortium space. 3 member species immediately sent messages to Earth, promising to support human demands. The Threxians began withdrawing their support for the Vrexians. Others began evacuating their citizens from Vrexian space, but the Vrexian military refused to surrender. Their pride, their honor, everything they had built for 10,000 years depended on their dominance. To surrender to humans, to primitives, was unthinkable. The war continued. For 8 months, humanity brought hell to the Vrexian Empire. They burned worlds, destroyed fleets, and killed billions. Human casualties mounted too. 600 million humans died in the fighting. But Earth's population kept supporting the war. They had seen what the Vrexians did. They would never forgive. They would never forget. The Vrexians tried everything. They attacked Earth directly, but human defense systems had become formidable. They hired mercenaries, but humans paid better. They tried biological weapons, and humans responded with worse. Finally, in the ruins of what had been Vrexian High Command, Commander Jothic made a decision. He was old now, broken by failure and grief. The empire he had served was dying. His people were being exterminated. He opened a communication channel to General Webb. "I surrender," he said simply. "Please, no more. We were wrong. We were arrogant. We did not understand what we had done. Please stop the killing." Webb looked at the broken Vrexian commander on his screen. A year ago, this being had harvested Earth like it was nothing, had enslaved 10 million humans, had murdered countless others. "It is too late for please," Webb said coldly. "You will surrender unconditionally. Every officer involved in the harvest will stand trial. You will pay reparations to Earth for 200 years, and you will never again raise a weapon against any species without our permission. These are not negotiable terms. Accept them or your species ends." Jothic bowed his head. "I accept." 3 days later, the Vrexian Empire formally surrendered to humanity. The treaty was signed on Earth in the ruins of New York City, where the harvest had first begun. Vrexian representatives knelt before human leaders and accepted every term. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Vrexian Empire, dominant power for 10,000 years, had been brought to its knees by a species that had only learned about aliens 2 years before. Councillor Rith Vera stood in the Consortium Council and addressed the assembled representatives. "We must accept human demands. All of them. Slavery is abolished effective immediately. Any species found practicing slavery will face Earth's military. This is not a negotiation. This is survival." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Consortium history, slavery became illegal across all member worlds. But the cost had been terrible. 40 worlds destroyed, 18 billion dead. 50 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was different now. changed in ways no one could have imagined when the Vrexians first harvested Earth. Counselor with Vera stood in the Consortium Council chamber, now renamed the Terran Concordat Assembly. The name change reflected the new reality. Humans did not rule directly, but their influence shaped everything. Their military protected the weak. Their laws governed the strong. Their culture spread like wildfire through the galaxy. She was old now, ancient by Elvar standards. She had watched humanity transform from victims to victors to something more complex, something that still worried her even after half a century. Today she was addressing the assembly on the anniversary of the war's end. Representatives from 90 species listened. Many were young, too young to remember the old consortium. To them, human dominance was normal, natural, the way things had always been. 50 years ago, Ithavera began, the Vrexian Empire made a terrible mistake. They looked at humanity and saw weakness. They saw a species without natural weapons, without thick scales or powerful claws. They thought humans would be easy to break. Around the chamber, beings nodded. Everyone knew this story. It was taught in schools across the galaxy now. But the Vrexians did not understand what they were seeing. Humans have no natural weapons because they invented better ones. They have no armor because they built it. Every predator on their world they either killed or made into pets. Every challenge their planet gave them, they survived. The Vrexians did not harvest a weak species. They harvested the most dangerous predator their world had ever produced. Ithavera paused, letting her words sink in. The Vrexians paid the price for their ignorance. But we all paid a price. The galaxy is safer now, yes. Slavery is gone. The weak are protected. But we live under a new order, one built by human hands and enforced by human weapons. Some of the younger representatives looked confused. Was she criticizing humanity? That was dangerous even 50 years later. But Ithavera continued. I do not say this as criticism. I say it as observation. We broke humanity's trust. We showed them the galaxy was hostile and cruel. Now they will never forget that lesson. They watch us all. Always vigilant, always ready to respond to threats with overwhelming force. This is what we created. In the observation gallery, Dr. Sarah Chen listened to the speech. She was 78 years old now, her hair gray and her body marked by years of hard living. She had retired from active service 20 years ago, but she still attended important ceremonies. The scars on her arms from Vrexian torture had faded but never fully disappeared. Beside her sat David Park. His daughter had been dead for 50 years, but he still carried her picture in his pocket. He had never remarried, never had other children. His life had ended in that labor camp, even though his body kept living. She is not wrong, David said quietly, listening to Ithavera. We did become something terrible. We became what we needed to be, Sarah replied. Would you rather we had stayed slaves? No, but I wonder what we lost to become free. Sarah had no answer to that. It was a question she had asked herself 10,000 times over the decades. General Marcus Webb was not at the ceremony. He had died 5 years earlier, peacefully in his sleep. But his legacy lived on. The Terran Defense Force, the most powerful military in the galaxy, followed the doctrines he had written. His face was on monuments across Earth. Children learned his name in school alongside other great military leaders from history. The war crime trials had lasted for 10 years. Thousands of Vrexian officers had been judged for their roles in the harvest and the subsequent war. Some were executed, others imprisoned for life. Commander Jothic had been among the first to face trial. He had been found guilty and executed by firing squad, a human military tradition the Vrexians found barbaric. The Vrexian Empire no longer existed. The species still lived, but they were scattered, diminished, paying reparations to Earth that would continue for another 150 years. A proud warrior culture had been broken so completely that Vrexian children now grew up learning human history and human values. Some called it justice. Others called it cultural genocide. The debate continued. After the ceremony, Sarah Chen walked through the memorial park built on the site of New York City. The city had been rebuilt, but this section was preserved as it had been after the harvest. Ruins stood as reminders. Names of the dead were carved into black stone walls that stretched for kilometers. She found her sister's name on one wall. Rebecca Chen, age 16, killed in the initial bombardment. Sarah traced the letters with her fingers as she did every year. I made them pay for you, Becca, she whispered. I hope it was enough. A young human couple walked past, tourists visiting the memorial. They looked at the walls with solemn expressions but could not truly understand. They had been born after the war, into a galaxy where humans were powerful and respected and feared. They had never known slavery or helplessness. Sarah envied them that innocence. Across the galaxy, the changes humanity had brought were everywhere. On Vrex Prime, rebuilt after the war, former slave species walked freely. Monuments to human liberators stood in city squares. Children played in parks that once held labor camps. On 40 worlds, life slowly returned. The planets humans had burned were being terraformed, restored, made livable again. It would take centuries, but humanity had committed to the effort. They had destroyed these worlds as warnings. Now they rebuilt them as promises that the killing was over. But not everyone was happy with the new order. In the shadows of the galaxy, groups formed. Anti-human coalitions who resented being dominated by former primitives. Some plotted revenge. Others simply wanted to be free of human oversight. Humanity watched them all carefully. The intelligence services never slept. The military never stood down. Humans had learned their lesson well. The galaxy was dangerous and they would never be caught unprepared again. 500 human ships patrolled consortium space at all times. Human observers sat on every major world, monitoring for threats. Human weapons platforms surrounded Earth and all human colonies, ready to respond to any attack within minutes. Some species called it paranoia. Humans called it survival. Dr. Sarah Chen gave her last public speech 10 years after the anniversary ceremony. She was 88 years old, her body failing, but her mind still sharp. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. "I was there at the beginning," she said, her voice thin but steady. "I was harvested, enslaved, tortured. I watched friends die. I killed my captors with my own hands. I helped wage a war that killed billions. People ask me if I regret what we did. If I think we went too far." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Yes, we went too far. We became monsters to fight monsters. We killed billions to save millions. We burned worlds to make a point. By any moral standard, we committed atrocities." Around the galaxy, people watched, waiting for what she would say next. But I do not regret it, because the alternative was worse. The alternative was accepting slavery, accepting that humans were prey, accepting that the strong could take what they wanted from the weak. We said no. We paid the price in blood and souls to make sure no species would ever harvest another without facing total destruction in response. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. We broke them. We broke the Vrexians, broke the consortium, broke the old order. And from the pieces we built something better. Not perfect, not gentle, but better. Slavery is gone. The weak are protected. Predators think twice before attacking prey. Sarah smiled sadly. We lost our innocence. We lost our mercy. We became what we needed to be. And 50 years later, the galaxy is safer because of it. Was it worth the cost? Ask the freed slaves. Ask the species who will never be harvested. Ask the children growing up in a galaxy where beings are not bought and sold. She stood slowly, painfully. I am old now. I will die soon, but I will die free, and my people are free. And billions across the galaxy are free because we chose to fight. That is enough. That has to be enough. The speech became famous. It was quoted in schools, debated by philosophers, studied by historians. People argued about whether humanity had been justified in its actions or had simply replaced one form of tyranny with another. Dr. Sarah Chen died 2 years later. She was buried on Earth with full military honors. Millions attended her funeral, including representatives from every species in the Concordat. Even Vrexians came, the descendants of her former captors, to pay respects to the woman who had destroyed their empire. 20 years after that, a young Vrexian student visited the Museum of the Harvest on Earth. The museum displayed artifacts from the war, told the story from both sides, and tried to make sense of what had happened. The student stood before a hologram of Dr. Chen, watching her give that final speech. When it ended, she looked at her teacher, an elderly human woman who had volunteered to guide Vrexian visitors through the museum. "Do you think we deserved what happened?" the student asked. "My people, I mean. Did we deserve to be broken like that?" The old woman thought carefully before answering. She had been a child during the war, too young to fight but old enough to remember. "Deserve is a complicated word," she said finally. "Did your people deserve to be destroyed for the actions of their leaders?" No, most Vrexians were not directly involved in the harvest.